So looking forward the next 3 to 5 years, can you give me some predictions about the media landscape?
Oh, well, it is moving towards more and more addressability, it seems. Um, and I think the idea, though, that all the cable companies will just cease to exist because young people will not subscribe to cable, I don't really subscribe to that. I think that as people get older, they'll get a little bit more settled in their ways and they'll have a home, and then there'll be a need to have a more sort of stable situation. So I don't see TV disappearing, but I think what people will get to is that younger people don't really see a difference between TV and digital. It'll all just be one thing. So in that sense, maybe TV's going away to be replaced by something which is a bit broader in definition. So that's a longer term view. I think one other issue we'll always face, though, is that this sort of concept of a completely sort of closed loop of information about what devices are doing and how that then leads to purchase activity and the ability to influence that through the appropriate creative and the appropriate serving up of ads. I think the concept that will get to a point of being perfect is unrealistic. It will never be perfect because the world is a lot messier than that, and people are a lot less predictable than that, and thank God for that. I think, and also because of that disconnect between people and devices as well. Sometimes I wonder if it will actually get to a point where nobody cares about actually what people are doing, because all they're doing is communicating between devices and seeing how that relates to money moving from one electronic place to another, and actually people get excluded from that whole equation. As long as the money goes from one place to another as a result of this, and you can demonstrate that actually you're net up, it doesn't matter what people are doing. That seems like almost Orwellian vision of what may happen. But again, I don't think it will happen, because even if that succeeds for 1 year, next year it may not work as well. And then people sitting around the boardroom and say, but what are people doing? What's actually happening? And then you have to go out and do some old-fashioned research into individuals rather than just looking at how devices are communicating with each other. So we'll always need researchers, I think.
Where do you think the future is for traditional research?
Traditional research, I suppose first we have to define that, and I suppose having started my career at NOP, which is now part of GFK, back in the mid-1980s, traditional research then was, I suppose simply put, sample, interview, project, or measure, project, I suppose. So if we think about it in those sorts of disciplines, the ability to draw a sample, to then ask the right questions of that sample, or collect the right data from that sample, and then use it to project to population to infer conclusions about the population. I think those skills are always going to be in demand, and it'll be very worrying if they aren't in demand. One story I tell probably more often than I should is the story in the 1930s of the Literary Digest having access to what was big data in those days, millions and millions of records of voter intent, where they confidently predicted Alf Landon would win the presidential election in 1936. He didn't win, and in fact normally I'll put a picture of Alf Landon up on a slide and nobody knows who he is, bless him. Franklin D. Roosevelt won that election, and it was successfully predicted by Dr. Gallup, who interviewed 50,000 people rather than having millions of records. And I think our industry is sort of founded on that principle, that if you want to really understand what people are doing, what consumers are doing, what the population thinks, then you have to do it in a scientific way. And that means that research discipline is very important, and statistics is a big part of that. But research integrity in terms of designing questionnaires properly and getting the right information from consumers is paramount as well, and that will continue to be the case, I think. But of course what's happened in the last few years is that there have been more and more databases available, computing power has increased, and so all those skills and disciplines around that have come along to augment those more traditional, almost like they almost feel like cottage industry sorts of skills now, don't they? But all those things have to coexist if we really want to understand what consumers are doing.